This month marks Persona's 20th anniversary in the West. The legacy of its succession of sequels and origins are as bizarre as the plots in these titles. So sit back for a demonic retrospective on apocalyptic levels. Let's begin with Persona's father figure, Shin Megami Tensei. The first game, Digital Devil Story, Megami Tensei, was released for the Famicom on September 11, 1987 in Japan. The subject matter for it and the rest of these games revolve loosely around the apocalypse in Japan where demons have invaded. They began as first-person dungeon crawler RPGs. Around the series' 10-year mark, a change to the formula was introduced with a spin-off. Persona Revelations launched in Japan on September 20, 1986 for the PS1 and 2 months later for the US, making it the first game in the SMT series to be localized. Instead of focusing on the apocalypse, Persona instead shifted to a group of high school students who stumble upon demonic powers in order to fight for their lives and uncover what is going on inside their school and surrounding town. The battle system is similar, although tweaked from SMT's origins. Persona 2 Innocent Sin debuted in Japan on June 24, 1999 for the PS1. It stars a new cast of high school students and a plot involving a mysterious man named Joker who is causing chaos. Although the focus isn't on the first plot, there are recurring themes and characters to tie things together. The mechanics also stayed relatively the same, but the big sticks was the exclusion of the series' standard first-person perspective. It also received a somewhat direct sequel called Persona 2 Eternal Punishment in 2000. Now, here's where things get tricky for Western fans. Europe received the first game in 2010 when it was remade for the PSP. Both the US and Europe got Persona 2 Innocent Sin on the PSP in 2011. Yet, when Persona 2 Eternal Punishment was released in 2000, the US got it that same year, and it has yet to be distributed in Europe in any form. So to put things into perspective, Europe, for a long while, didn't get any Persona game until 2008, which I'll elaborate on later, and the US received the original followed by the third game, technically, which in itself was a sequel to the second, so half of a whole. It's odd, but censorship was a huge part of localization in the early days of video games due to religious themes and sexual content for Persona in particular. It's unfortunate, but I would argue that the important era of Persona didn't start until 2006 when the series seemingly rebirthed itself. Now admittedly, I haven't played a lot of these three games except for giving myself some context when researching for this retrospective. All the games you're seeing are the PSP remakes. They're just a little bit easier to capture. I can definitely see the pieces falling into place for the future, but a lot of things held me back from getting into them. The story, pacing, art, battle system, and everything in between feel like relics of a bygone RPG era. I see them as important stepping stones to the franchise, but for me, this long-awaited sequel is where my love began, both with Persona and Shin Megami Tensei. Let's stop beating around the bush and talk about Persona 3. It first launched for the PS2 in Japan on July 13, 2006, which, to put things in perspective, marked the year as Persona's 10th anniversary. Like Shin Megami Tensei's push for Persona as a spin-off around their 10th, this third game was meant to revitalize the franchise, pushing it forward in all capacities to fit more into a global appealing game. As such, it debuted just a year later in 2000 for the US, and 2008 for both Europe and Australia, marking that year the franchise's beginnings in each territory. Players take on the role of a male protagonist who is ushered into a secret school society known as Seas, or a socialized extracurricular execution squad, who are tasked with stopping shadows during the mysterious 13th hour, or dark hour, where supernatural chaos runs rampant. Your school serves as the central dungeon you'll traverse through as the game progresses, which is a standard mechanic in a lot of dungeon crawlers. Other than that, most other RPG mechanics set forth in the previous games remain intact, albeit readjusted. Where it differs is both in the art and tone. It's reminiscent of an anime like Sailor Moon, where a young high school student is mild-mannered by day, turning into a monster-slaying badass at night. In turn, there are a plethora of side activities to keep you occupied in between big missions. There's school to study for, jobs to attend, and friends to pursue, which all help in battles one way or another. Pursuing studies and other academic clubs can lead to increased stats, along with friendships that will unlock new Persona monsters, and jobs help you earn money. Days and nights go by along with holidays, and it gives the player a sense of progression. Even though it's just a game, you'd be a cold fish if you didn't fall in love with these characters. That passing of time builds bonds that no other RPG can claim. Because of this, the game's length is huge, and I'd be lying if it wasn't repetitive at times because of this, but the highlights far outweigh any sense of ill will. While Persona 3 was my first introduction into the franchise, it seems Persona 4 was really where things exploded globally, enticing Atlus, the developer, to release a litany of spin-offs in order to tide fans over in between its release and Persona 5, but let's backtrack a bit. Persona 4 launched in Japan for the PS2 on July 10th, 2008, later followed by the US that same year, and in Australia and Europe in 2009. Players are yet another silent protagonist in high school, although the subject matter was handled differently. While each story in the Persona games offered mystery, the game in Persona 4 is trying to solve a set of murders, along with figuring out why there's another world filled with demons inside their televisions. While this is in itself a gruesome subject, the tone of Persona 4 changed to a more lighthearted adventure, further delving into the friendship simulation that began with the previous entry. I didn't think it was possible to love another set of characters as much as I did in Persona 3, but Persona 4 proved me wrong. And gameplay, yada yada yada, remained as solid as ever. As I previously teased, Persona 4 got 3 spin-offs. First, there was Persona 4 Arena in 2012 for the PS3, which was a fighting game developed by the Blaze Blue team. Next, a more mechanically focused dungeon crawler with gameplay similar to Entry Odyssey called Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth in 2014 for the 3DS. It featured both casts of Persona 3 and Persona 4. And then last year we saw the rhythm dancing game reminiscent of Hatsune Miku in 2015 for the PS Vita called Persona 4 Dancing All Night. While I enjoyed these games for what they were, it definitely felt like Atlus was trying to fill the void of Persona 5. Now, Persona 5 was originally teased with the announcement of Persona Q Shadow of the Labyrinth, Persona 4 Dancing All Night, and the reissue of Persona 4 Arena in 2013. It was supposed to originally release in 2014, but it kept getting pushed back until it finally launched back in September in Japan on both PS3 and PS4. I've been on a media blackout since in order to remain unspoiled. Both the US and Europe were going to get the game on February 14th, 2017, but it was just delayed, pushing it back to April 4th, 2017. Needless to say, this retrospective will not feature anything more on Persona 5, but believe you me that I promise to make a video or something related to it upon its release. Until then, I'll end by wishing the Persona franchise a very worthy and confusing happy 20th anniversary. Did you know that was a ReActionExaminer video? If you liked it, you should subscribe to me to keep up with everything that I'm doing. Also, if you have some other interests, like sex for example, check out Tomops, which is a comedy sex podcast thing wherein my best friend and I check out the weird and abnormal and the erotic. And of course, you should support me on Patreon because, hey, I want to make the channel better and I want your help to do so. Plus, if you want to check out my writing, check out Game Jerk, where I have archives and new stuff for all projects, okay? You can find all the stuff and more in the description with the links below. Thanks for watching, and I will see you all next time.